about finished.
All right, Megan, the presentation is yours.
Okay. So I'm giving a lecture today on the basics of project management. Since it's a huge field with a lot of techno jargon and concepts, which can be kind of abstract if you're not used to working in more formal business environments. I'm just keeping it kind of basic and geared more towards an organic style organization. So without further ado, here we go. All right, ta-da. So this seems almost too basic to need explaining, but here we go. According to the PMBOK Guide 4th edition, a project is, quote, a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. This is different from a program, which is a group of related projects, and operations, which are repetitive tasks. Each project has 5 process groups: initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and controlling, and closing. Some projects, such as building a bridge, move through these phases in a predictive sequence. Other projects, such as building a website, may repeat these process groups many times as the project is adapted and completed through successive iterations. Okay, moving on to number 2. Okay, I have 2 windows open. I'm so sorry. Let me try this again.
Okay.
I apologize. Technology. All right, here we go. Okay, there we go. So that was initiation. You meet with the team, define project goals. Is it something to begin? Got a great idea for a project. For example, we're going to create a new theme park exhibit based on the latest technology. It's going to have a high overhead, but it's also going to bring in massive crowds. Is it worth doing? What exactly are you trying to achieve? How will you know if you've succeeded? You and your team crunch some back of the napkin numbers and want to move forward. You discuss the project with your company's stakeholders, and a charter is written, granting you permission to acquire the necessary funds and resources to achieve the goals described. New theme park exhibit, the Indominus Rex. It's going to be so cool. During the planning stage, you'll do everything in your power to ensure success. You might look at historical documents for information on the costs and risks associated with similar genetic projects. You'll check the lessons learned register. You'll make decisions about whether to buy or build certain assets. You're going to have to build the Indominus Rex, but you can probably procure electric fencing from an outside source. While you compile this data, you'll create management plans for knowledge areas like what the scope's going to be and what the cost is going to look like. You want to plan quality control into the project rather than deal with the cost of failure after the fact. Remember, kids, it's far cheaper to train staff and plan inspections than to realize after your new exhibit opens that there's a fatal flaw in animal control. Okay, have you got your plans in order? Great, their powers combine into the project management plan, which you will update during the project's life cycle to reflect developments or approved changes. So OKR is management by objectives. It's a helpful tool to use during the early parts of your project. It's a way to structure goals to clarify what you're trying to achieve and how you'll get there. You can't measure your success or figure out how you're failing and what you need to do to fix it if you don't have specific objectives that are also measurable. Your objective must be, again, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Megan, can I jump in with a quick question?
Absolutely.
Can you tell us what OKR stands for?
Sure, it's objectives and key results.
I see. So this is a tool that managers, project managers use.
Yes, it can be. So the objective is essentially what your goal is, and the key result is how you're getting there, how you're going to measure it. And the initiatives are your output, the steps that you take to make your goal happen. It's possible to succeed in your output, which is the things that you're going to do to make the goal happen, but fail in the objective, or vice versa. In our example, you can successfully create a dinosaur, but if the dinosaur eats everyone, your outcome fails if the outcome was to make a lot of money. So speaking of, what do you do if you're not meeting your goal? In more formal projects, there are a slew of formulas to help you calculate project performance against what you've planned, such as whether you're ahead or behind in cost or schedule, and how big the variances are and how the variances may affect your final expenditures. We're not going to get into those here. All you need to know for now is that your project has a specific objective, so you need to keep tabs on how your performance is tracking against your planned performance. If problems arise, you'll know quickly because you're keeping tabs on how you're doing, and you'll be able to figure out a problem's root cause and adjust if possible. For example, the root cause of Project Indominus Rex's problem was that we gave our dinosaur the ability to turn invisible. Now, was this intentional? Probably not, since an invisible attraction is not going to draw crowds or make money. Was this an accident arising from genetic oversight? Probably, but if so, let's do some research and figure out what happened, and then brainstorm ways to stop this kind of oversight from reoccurring in the future. Finally, a project might end, well, a project will end eventually. It might end because the objectives have been achieved, or it might end because it's no longer feasible to continue the project. In either case, appropriate protocol is to thank your team for their hard work and recognize what everyone has contributed. In more formal projects, you'll document what you've learned and file these reports in the company's knowledge repository as historical information and lessons learned that can be used by future project managers in future projects. In more casual projects, a sincere thank you may suffice. In project-oriented organizations, your project team may even separate to work on other projects for other project managers as you yourself head a new project team. So very basic sweep. If you want to learn more about project management or dig deeper into the formulas or other more technical concepts, I can very highly recommend a course on Udemy taught by Joseph Phillips. And I'm currently enrolled in the PMI Institute, which offers certifications in project management. The CAPM is their certificate in project management. PMP is project management professional. They also offer certifications in Agile and various other aspects of project management. And thus completes our exciting dive into the wild, wonderful world of project management.
All right, thank you very much, Megan. Now, I've heard you use the term more professional projects.
Oh, I meant more formal. If I
more
said
formal projects, okay.
That was a slip of the tongue.
No, probably. I think you did say formal. What would you consider our projects?
I would say our projects we're more organic type of organization where we don't have like a rigid hierarchy with specific rules on how to document work, how to submit, and reports to write, things to submit. I think we're in the process of incorporating some of those aspects. but I
What
wouldn't
a-
classify us as, what's that?
Since you, okay, that's the categorization. What are some of the pitfalls of our style of doing projects?
Our style of doing projects, there can be some confusion in what people are supposed to be doing. There can also be some difficulty in setting and meeting goals if things aren't laid out specifically what we're reaching for and how we're going to do it and who's going to do what. There can also be some difficulty in learning from past mistakes or past successes if past projects aren't documented and aren't reached for when beginning a new comparable project.
Awesome. Thank you for that answer.
Sure.
I got a question, Megan.
Okay.
I was wondering, when did project management become a thing? And so I don't have any, hard data that says that years ago it wasn't. But one thing I thought about was like old TV, well, even current TV sitcoms. You have people who are plumbers, electricians, accountants, bankers, but I can't think of a character on a sitcom that said, "I'm a project manager."
I'm going to reach here, but I feel like it's something that's only really become a legitimate field in the last few decades as the business world has become more formalized and international. I think it was probably just kind of an informal position of manager for whatever company you're working for.
Yeah, because it seems like the skills of a project manager have always been important.
Yeah,
But
I would agree. Yeah, I think the basic concepts are things that have always been known to people who have led projects formally or informally. And the people who have been most successful are probably the ones who have implemented most of the widely recognized successful tools that today make up things like the PMBOK guide, which is the body of knowledge accumulated by project managers. But a lot of it seems like it's fairly intuitive in studying the field. There are a lot of concepts that seem like they're easy to grasp once you know what they're talking about, but some of the jargon can be brand new territory.
What got
would
you
like to hear-
interested in project management? Sorry, last
Sure.
question.
That's good. That's a
How'd
good
you
question.
get interested in project management, Megan?
So my very first run-in with it was when I worked for Electronic Arts, and the art director at the time had a meeting with me and said that there were basically two paths for my career moving forward. If I wanted to continue being just, well, not just, if I wanted to continue working full-time as an artist, that was perfectly valid. If I wanted to go into management, maybe become an art lead, I would have to give up getting to do art as much as I wanted, but I would also have a role in helping to direct others in creating art. And I thought, that sounded like something that I would be interested in. But I left the video game world shortly after, and it wasn't until I joined Anthropocene that the opportunity presented itself a second time. And I realized it's something that I like. I feel that I'm growing as a person, getting to do this. So it's kind of had a sneak attack in terms of being interested in it. I mean, it wasn't something that I woke up one day and was like, yes, I want to do this for the rest of my life. I mean, originally I thought I was going to be a movie director. So Richard, you had a question or a comment?
Yeah. I think there are many people in this room who may not have directly been a project manager, but they've dealt with project managers. It would be nice to hear some of the perspectives of what that role was like in relation to their own work. What were some of their impressions of the project manager role too?
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'll step down and open the floor if anyone wants to answer.
I'll say something. I've had experience as a product marketing manager, which is sort of a different layer that works with the project management team to develop a specific element of a project. So the product marketing manager starts with something called a PDR, which is a product design requirements document. So that's always sort of a feasibility study done before you decide what the key features and elements are that go into why you're designing something and why you're building something and why you're hoping that it meets the needs of the market. And another interaction I've had is a really good friend of mine is a project manager at SFO. And his job is more in the field of quality assurance between the owner, which is the airport commission, and the general contractor, which is a major construction company. So he just has to make sure that the paint goes on and that the marble matches. And one of his trips was to Carrara, Italy to select the marble for the airport terminal. So those are the kinds of things that he gets involved with, and he's actually an architect.
That's interesting.
I can comment.
Oh yeah, please.
So, we do a lot of project management and product management and software engineering. And I've seen it done in lots of different ways. Some places are very ad hoc and others are very formal. Typically, I can tell you what the challenges are. There is a over reliance on tracking. So there's very much, especially in very, very big organizations, there's this thing called Jira, which is a project management tracking tool. And so I have clients like who just become very obsessed with this, trying to track everything going on, and so they can manage it. And this becomes tremendously problematic over time, because what happens is people begin to optimize for the tracking system. So rather than optimize to make sure the projects are well, you begin to change what you're doing so that things look good in the tracking system when you're being evaluated. And that ends up really, and it also affects it affects how projects are structured, because if you're being tracked, you have to do things in small segments. And so it really affects planning and analysis. And one of the things that happens is that in very, very large complex projects, the important thing is to manage the impact that one team has on another. So if a classic example is, someone's working on a database system, and, you might have 25 groups in the company that are accessing this database system. And if you make a change to it, you could bring half of those groups to a standstill. And, I think that it's that kind of impact analysis is really challenging as you start to scale. So, but we certainly see a lot of, I can go on video if you want. So that's one of the things I see a lot of. And it's the good projects are ones where people are really able to understand not only the flow of what you're doing, but the cross impact of how your project timelines and your deliverables affect what's happening in other teams parallel to you and downstream. And that becomes much more complicated as things get more and more technical. I don't know what it was like in the gaming industry, but sort of where I'm at, it gets to be pretty hairy. And having someone, it's really important to have someone who understands what's going on and can manage this properly. So this is an extremely important role, because you if not, things just become very chaotic. Things break all the time, and you end up just constantly fighting fires. You're not able to move forward because there's just too much cross impact in the organization. So that's sort of when I look at project management and sort of how the experience, the things I've seen, that's sort of really the critical differentiator.
Yeah,
Charles,
that's
have you ever been part of a team that had less need for a manager because it was so well functioning, coordinated?
Yeah, the best team I was on was at BlackRock. Those guys knew what they were. They were the research group at BlackRock that was researching the funds and doing sort of the trying to predict the markets. That was a very that did not require a huge amount of management. That was a much more of a scientific type problem where you're basically just now the engineering side, on the other hand, was the opposite. They were very strict. But that was a good example of a team where I didn't have to have, basically there was no project management. You just did whatever you thought was the right thing to do.
I can give you an example of what Charles was talking about, but in the physical world of actually designing a system, a couple of cases that I've been aware of. One was I worked with an aircraft designer from World War II, and he was telling me about the time they came up with a concept called total tolerance, because what happened was they were building B-17 aircraft during World War II, and because they didn't understand total tolerance at that time, the aircraft could come out either 2 feet longer or 2 feet shorter than what the design called for.
wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and China did the same thing. The Chinese took apart an L-1011 jetliner, and they copied it, and it came out 2 feet longer. So unless you have a big picture concept of how to build something, plus or minus 0.1 millimeter can add up if everything's on the plus side.
That's incredible. It reminds me of a story. Listening to how the Soviets copied the B-2 bomber, and they were interviewing some of the engineers who were on the team, and the way they ran the project was that they, when they had the engineers on the B-2 bomber, they were copying the American B-2 bomber. They put their families in detention. They basically monitored them and said, well, if you don't copy this exactly the way the Americans have built it, we're going to kill your families.
Wow.
And they copied it. It was copied so perfectly that they even, they have like a picture of the woman they used to have like these, I don't remember what they're called, but there were women who would be like on the tip of the plane.
Yeah, like the pinups.
Yeah, they copied it so perfectly that they even copied the painting of the pinup girl on the plane. So wow. That's how they ran things. And so that's how communism, that's their project management structure. So that was a heck of a story to listen to.
Wow, good old totalitarian regimes.
Well, one thing that the Russians copied was the first stealth fighter. And unfortunately, what they copied was the Revell model, which was entirely different design. And it was a way to throw them off the design trail by releasing this supposedly secret model that was the new stealth plane, but it was actually just made to confuse the Russians.
Does anyone else have a project management story, pitfalls or highlights working on a team with somebody?
I want to volunteer Michael to answer that question.
Michael, you are
Me?
up.
Yeah.
I never had a project manager where I worked. We had a product manager, and then just the engineering manager. But yeah, I mean, we did utilize Jira a lot as far as managing the work that the engineering team had to work on. But a lot of the tickets were created by the product team. All the new features and the so I guess if that's gonna, I guess in a way, like the product managers on our team were the project managers. They would set up the tickets. We would pull, or they'd set up a backlog of tickets, and we pull a set number for each sprint that we will take on. Yeah, as far as I guess like we never really I guess like getting something right was estimation, which is difficult. Estimating, I mean, for things with the small tasks where the knowns are known, I don't know, it sounds strange, but with not too many unknowns, then estimation can be not too bad. But for maybe larger features, or features with or tasks with too many unknowns, or things like bugs, estimation on the completion of those tasks is pretty difficult. So I don't know if Megan, you've the courses you've taken, they've talked about good estimation processes or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, they talk about things like calculating your earned value, your planned value, your cost performance index, things like that. Calculating what you're doing currently as a percentage of the project completed, either in cost or schedule, versus what has been budgeted in cost and schedule.
Mm-hmm. And also, I guess the project managers they're the ones that are developing the task and also reprioritizing certain tasks, or prioritizing task over other ones. Because in the short term things can, yeah, that's the thing. Estimating in the long term is really hard because priorities change. It's not going to be the same priority for like 1 month or even several months to a year.
Yeah, it also can very much change depending on what type of organization we're talking about. Like if it's something where teams are in their own silos and there's really no discussion with each other except through a single point of contact, then you probably just have a single project manager who works with the team. But if it's something like a hybrid organization where you've got somebody controlling resources and somebody else managing the team, then there could be some negotiations taking place, and it could be challenging to get the right resources when you need them at the right time. And then also adaptive environments, like sprint planning does change every couple of weeks.
Oh yeah, so since we're like a pretty multifaceted organization, I think it's very useful to have you in that role. In my previous role, there's an all engineering team, so there's as far as like, and I don't know, we were still pretty siloed to a specific task, even when we were integrated into a bigger company. We were still doing very I guess narrow work, I guess, or not really broad range of work.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, what's up?
Oh, I
Oh
was
no,
just
no, no. I was
curious.
talking about the previous experience of the teams I worked with was just doing a much more narrow part of the product overall in the company. So I never really interacted with a project manager per se, but
In
uh,
a narrow role, were you aware of what was happening downstream or up the pipeline?
um, I guess not so much upstream, maybe more downstream. But yeah, yeah, as far as the wider role of our particular product, and not so much, but you know, just more focused on the uh, that our aspect only.
Cool.
Cool. All right. Does anybody else have any other comments or questions about project management?
Megan, are there things that it just doesn't make sense to project manage? I mean, if you don't have a product, or if it's just so either chaotic or unpredictable, maybe some kind of research or something where you still don't know what the breakthrough is going to be, that it's either impossible or it doesn't make sense.
I'm sure there are situations like that. Absolutely. Especially if it's a really small task or a small focus project that you're working on.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I didn't. So I've been part of a project management office before, and it's a very rigid way of. It's kind of strange. Project managers don't really have lots of power in general, and so they're sent into these situations to help improve process. This was in the government, and a lot of times, right? Somebody will go, "Well, who the heck are you?" Like I don't report to you, and I don't. And so you get a lot of organizational pushback when sometimes you try to implement project management controls, because your goal may not necessarily be aligned with some of the people who are part of the project. And I'd say every organization has some of that. In the government, it's particularly difficult because people have been doing things their way for a long time. I where this kind of comes from, where someone was saying, I've never heard of this profession before, back in sitcoms and project management, and in general, I'd say a graduate business school is kind of like a Mr. Rogers neighborhood, except for people who are looking to get into business. Sometimes people forget when they're working how to be good neighbors, good partners, try to collaborate with one another. People start to have their own mini kingdoms inside an organization. And a lot of what graduate business school is about is being able to navigate those politics, and to navigate how to begin to structure people in a way to work together collaboratively. It's not always successful, but a lot of business school is just how do you work with these personalities? How do you work with the people with different goals and try to put it all together? So project management seems to. I have my PMP. Well, I got that 10 years ago now. And I don't know if a lot has changed. Maybe the tools have changed a little bit more. They're a little bit less strict. Yeah, Jira used to be a thing. I don't think Jira. I think it's still widely used, but it's not that effective. It's a difficult role, especially if your stakeholders are not fully bought in. And I've also traditionally seen many companies, when it comes down time to downsizing, project managers are the first ones to actually go, you know. So those are some of the ugly things about project management that I've seen throughout my professional career.
Interesting to know. Thank you.
I probably should have ended on a better note than
No, I mean,
Uh,
a dash of reality is always a good thing.
I have
Yeah.
a note that we can end on.
please.
Go for it.
Okay. Let's see. I have to share my screen. So this is something that Eddie shared in one of the Slack channels. We have a product manager here
Mhm.
who posts this. As a product manager, when I die, I want the developers, that'd be the software developers I worked with, to lower me into my grave so that they can let me down one last time. And
Well done.
there's actually a reply from a developer.
Oh.
There we go. At least this requirement is clear.
Oh, nice
No.
one.
Oh, that's amazing. That's a good one. Actually, unclear requirements. Yes.
I gotta take a
The bane.
snapshot of that. That is amazing.
Yeah, that's not too far from how the reality of product and project managers relationships with developers and engineers.
You know, that's
Indeed.
in a well-functioning organization, these roles are very important. You know, large, well-functioning organizations, and I think sometimes the problem is that you hire people who are very siloed because it's in their nature of the work that's who you want, right? You want someone who can work very siloed. Well, these people don't have a broad perspective, so they're difficult to work with. You know, and that it's the catch-22. You know, you end up, and I see this, and the people who need to be, you know, the more you apply the product management, the worse it gets, because you end up bringing in people who need to be managed, and these people don't really appreciate the project management because it's sort of it's difficult to get this right. And I've seen the worst possible cases of it. So even companies which it seems like things aren't really good, they have no idea how bad it can really be. So it's really, really an important role, and it's important for people to work together. You know, if you're trying to do anything complex, you have to have this. Otherwise, it's just pure chaos, and that's much worse. When part of the reason I'm here, the last firm I was at, I mean, they changed CEOs, and the CEO was from eBay, so he brought in something called the eBay work log, which is you have to track what you do every 6 hours. Well, that's great if you're outsourcing something to another country, and you know you're trying to, or you're working as a consultant and you're trying to bill people. It doesn't work in, you know, you have an organization which had basically been working freeform for 10 years, and somebody came to the organization and decided, I'm going to push this project management on the entire organization, and they destroyed the company. I mean, half the engineers just left, including the CEO. Well, we're gone, we're out. They completely destroyed the company. You know, been a misunderstanding of how the culture would respond, or maybe that was the goal. You know, maybe they wanted to outsource the whole thing. But it certainly has to. It certainly is very much a cultural issue inside the organization as well. You have to build the culture to be able to work within this. You can't just come in and, you know, shove it on to people. They'll just leave. Or in the government, maybe not leave and not do anything. I don't know how it works there. Maybe they can just stay forever, and private thing just move on. But with the big organizations I've worked with, you know, fairly, it's, you know, it's not bad. You know, you need to have it. It would be impossible to do anything at scale without it. And in fact, I think that's what Silicon Valley is kind of famous for, is that they're able to bring in these, you know, these people, and they scale up. You know, you're able to scale up the organizations by bringing in this kind of management and understanding how to structure the projects in a way that you can go from, you know, 20 employees to 2,000 employees, or 20,000, or some clients I have 200,000. Anyways, a great. Thanks for giving the presentation.
Thanks for the really great insights and also the cautionary tale about remembering to take culture into consideration front and foremost when trying to make changes. And if you do make changes, incremental changes are your friends.
I don't know if incremental is exactly the right word, but at least getting everyone to buy in.
Buying in is, yeah,
Yeah.
vital.
Yeah, I also like Charles's insights on the debilitating effects of micromanagement, and also how his previous comments stated how people would end up gaming Jira instead of
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
And that's exactly what you do. That's the game. That's your job. They put Jira
Yeah.
on you. Your job is to game it.
Yeah.
Um,
Asana.
that's
Asana too.
oh, Asana too. Yeah, Asana too. Asana's not as demanding, I think, as Jira, but it's but absolutely, it's absolutely the first thing. How do we game our way out of this, right? And the people who were able to survive in the organization understood how to do that. And so it's the basic rule of quantum mechanics. If you observe a system, you change it.
Mm-hmm.
Did all the product leads hear that? Your guys are trying to game your Asana boards. So prepare for a culture war.
I think it has to deal with incentives, because it's like if you put priority on, tracking Jira stats, then of course they're going to game the stats over the objectives. Kind of like how we've prioritized grades over actually learning stuff. So people would just game to get grades.
Well,
Better.
they have to do it. Otherwise, if your Jira stats aren't up, you don't get resources.
Yep.
So it's an incentive, but it's also, it's just part of what happens. I mean, the people who are good at gaming it end up, they end up going up, or they have to do it. I mean, there's no choice.
So how does leadership put together incentives that bring together the engineers to be, and all the members of the company to pull together on a string and be able to evaluate how well they're doing?
$1 billion question.
Yeah. Sorry, Micha.
No. Go ahead, Megan.
I feel like as long as the objective itself is prioritized, then, especially with a company like ours, which is full of so many creative and talented and technical people who are very hardworking, dedicated, passionate, at least at Anthropocene, for the teams I've worked in, it seems that you assign an objective and you strive for the objective, and measuring your success is secondary towards striving for the success. You want to keep track of what you're doing, but it doesn't become the grade is more important than what you're actually doing and making strides for the objective. Staying clear from micromanaging.
I'll just say we're trying to save the fucking environment. The end.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I will say that our company's culture, of course, stems from Carl, which is very hands-offish and very aspirational. And so starting from there, how we develop the programs that we have right now and why we participate in the projects we do, a lot of it is because of the personal talent that our staff members have and some of their passion. We never had an indoor air quality or air quality initiative, but we had always been interested in it. And then when Paloma came along, we could automatically tell that she has a talent for that. And so we tailored the program around her passion that would also help move our entire organization's goals along. So when you say organically, how we develop our Yeah, some of it is organic. Like I would say Quizzicist is not organic. It's something that Carl really wanted. And we put people who were talented at making quizzes like Erica, Michia, all together to put that together. But then we've also had Spaceship One, which was tailored all around Anna's passion as well, right? She has a passion and talent for this, and we wanted to make sure that she had the freedom and editorial freedom to pursue it, so that it, this thing is her brainchild and something that she can feel passionate about. That would also help our agenda. So a lot of this is kind of purposely built, the way the programs are structured. It's hard to put metrics around that, especially when it's around someone's passion. And so, as these programs evolved, we put the really basic ones out there. It's like, oh, how much reach do we have on the internet? How many, how much interaction have we had with the communities that we've built around these projects? That's sort of the basic line of metrics that we can take. They're not project management metrics that we use, but they are like, interaction and community building metrics that we can kind of lean on. So if anyone has any suggestions on how to improve that, or, what other ways can we measure how we progress? I think we're always looking for those suggestions.
Awesome. Any final thoughts or comments?
Thank you
Okay.
for putting this together, Megan.
Yeah, thanks everybody for attending and providing